I know I'm not the only one that remembers Generator Rex. If you're anywhere from the age of 18 to 25 and was a big fan of Cartoon Network, you probably remember that time period where every Friday and Saturday morning, Cartoon Network would air these action-adventure shows that were mainly marketed towards teenage boys. And me and many other people growing up at this time thought this era of Cartoon Network was so peak, as many of these shows differed from what you would see airing on Cartoon Network throughout the week. Instead of the normal cartoonish episodic shows that had become a mainstay of Cartoon Network, we were getting action-packed serialized series that were telling overall stories. And there were so many goated shows to come out of this time period, from the Secret Saturdays to Ben 10 Alien Force to Symbiotic Titan, Star Wars The Clone Wars, and Batman the Brave and the Bold. And while some shows would go on to become legendary amongst their respected fans, other shows kinda got outshadowed and are rarely talked about. Which brings me to the topic of today's video.
Hello, monster guy. I'm Rex. Now thrill me.
Generator Rex was a show that I was in love with while it was airing. Everything about this show was just so cool to me, from the art style to the characters to the world building and even just the overall story. I mean, come on, it had a talking monkey that shot twin pistols. It was literally a 14-year-old boy's dream show. But even though I remember this being one of my favorite shows growing up, it feels like one day I blinked and it was just gone, never referenced, never talked about by the network, and never shown again. And the only time I actually ever see this show get brought up is online by the fans, who talk about how good and severely underrated this show was. Which is why, while researching for this video, I was extremely surprised when I found out that this show had not only one, but 3 whole seasons that were all around 20 episodes long. I mean, they have way more popular series that don't even get approved for that many episodes. So today, I want to take a look back at Generator Rex, how the show came to be, what it was about, and how or why the series ultimately came to an end. And hopefully by the end of this, I can shine some light on this gem of a series. Generator Rex aired its first episode April 23rd, 2010. The show was created by Man of Action for Cartoon Network, and if that studio sounds familiar, it's the same one that's animated projects like Ben 10, The Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and Ultimate Spider-Man. So it's safe to say that they were well equipped to create an action-adventure show for the network. The show takes place in a world where one day a giant explosion goes off and these little tiny things called nanites enter every living thing around the world. And even though these nanites don't kill you or make you sick, if they go off, they transform you into these mutant monsters called Evos. And most Evos tend to be really hostile, ending up going on rampages. But this is where our main character Rex comes in. Get it? Rex? Generator Rex? You see, Rex is also an Evo, but the difference between him and other Evos is that he can actually control his nanites, which allows him to use them to fight and cure other Evos. And I'm not gonna lie, as a kid, I remember not really liking the look of Rex's transformations at first. I was so used to full body transformations that I thought it looked kinda weird with him only transforming certain parts of his body. For example, turning his arm into a giant metal sword, or turning his legs into a giant floating motorcycle. But the older I get, I really appreciate this choice, as it was not only just a cool spin on the transformation trope, but also it just looks so clean. Alongside Rex curing Evos, he also worked for this government organization called Providence, which is basically just the Men in Black for Evos, if the Men in Black worked out in public. Which was also just a good little detail for the show, because I can't tell you how many action series I've watched where the main character works for some secret organization, but they're getting into fights destroying literal city blocks and everybody just acts like nobody knows who's doing it. It just adds a little bit of realism, you know? Alongside Rex working at Providence, there was Bobo, Rex's talking monkey sidekick, who was personally my favorite character at times. Remember I said the Men in Black earlier? Well, there was also Agent 6, Rex's somewhat guardian figure that was always wearing a green suit. But I'd be a liar if I didn't say this man went crazy with the swords. And there was also Dr. Holiday, the hot doctor that was also a certified badass from time to time. This show had so many good characters, and I think that's one of the reasons why it was such a good show overall. Even though on paper this is a story about a 15-year-old boy transforming and going around the country fighting monsters, the creators really tried to add a sense of realism, which you see not only in the story but also in the way that the characters act. Like I said, Rex is a 15-year-old boy, and when we meet him in the beginning of season 1, he has amnesia, and all he knows is that he can cure Evos and that he works for Providence. And because Providence's whole goal is to stop Evos, we see many times throughout season 1 that the big boss White Knight doesn't really look at Rex as a human, rather he looks at him as just a solution to the end of the war against Evos. And this is reflected in how Rex is treated very early on. Being heavily monitored at all times, having a room that basically looks like a jail cell, and never really getting to act like a normal 15-year-old and experience things that someone his age would. And because of this, Rex has a normal response as someone his age would. He rebels a lot, oftentimes running away for a short period of time. But I guess this would be a little different from other 15-year-olds, since he is kind of the cure for all of humanity, and also they couldn't really contain him if they wanted to, you know, giant sword and all that. But it's these realistic actions and emotions that we see from these characters that allows the show to dive into more authentic and deeper storylines without it coming across as cheap or forced. Because on top of great characters, clean animation, and amazing fight scenes, the thing that made Generator Rex such an amazing show was its storytelling. Almost every episode was able to give an impactful and engaging story with consistent character development. One of the best episodes in the entire series is the season 2 episode Lions and Lambs. The episode starts off with Rex and Agent 6 going up against Breach, one of the reoccurring villains from the beginning of the series. It's in this fight that Rex and 6 learn that Breach's ability to warp things has grown stronger, and now she's able to warp things from different periods in time. After learning this, White deems Breach too dangerous to be on the villain side and wants her captured, but Rex assures White that he could persuade Breach to come to their side. A constant theme throughout the show is that even though Rex looks normal, he is still an Evo, and because of this, even though a majority of the population look at Evos as monsters, Rex is one of the few and only people to actually see Evos as the people that they are. So it's no surprise that Rex is against White just trying to capture Breach, and he wants to give her the choice to come to Providence with her own free will. Rex eventually tracks down Breach only to find out that the reason her power has amplified is because Van Kleiss has been pushing her body to the max to harness her power. In an attempt to save her, Rex persuades Breach to escape with him, and she ends up warping them out, visiting all of her favorite spots to calm her down. Unfortunately though, Van Kleiss ends up tracking the two down, and Rex has to fly his hoverboard to lose him. Rex then has a conversation with Breach about her coming to Providence with him, and while Breach is skeptical, it seems like she's warming up to the idea of it. But almost immediately after this, White, Agent 6, and other Providence soldiers show up and attack Breach trying to capture her, which causes Breach to freak out and call Rex a liar. A big fight then breaks out with Breach attacking the Providence soldiers and Van Kleiss showing back up fighting 6 and White. Eventually Breach ends up running off and Rex runs after her trying to talk, but when he finds her, Van Kleiss is there too to take her back. And in an attempt to show Breach that he never tried to trick her, Rex powers up the device around her chest to give her the ability to use her power without Van Kleiss's control. And while Breach warps Van Kleiss away somewhere through time, she's unable to control all of the power that Rex gave her, with her powers growing more and more unstable by the second. And when Rex asks Breach what's gonna happen when her powers go off, she tells Rex that she doesn't know, but she thanks him and says that it was nice to have a friend even if it was just for a little while. She then hugs Rex and we see the two get warped through a portal. We then cut to Rex, who's been warped to a desert, and he calls Providence to come pick him up. But when he's picked up by the soldiers, they're all acting strange, with none of them answering his questions or giving him any updates on the fight with Van Kleiss. And it's only when Rex arrives to HQ and meets with his brother that his brother reveals that Rex wasn't just warped to a desert, he was warped into the future with him being gone for 6 months. Rex then goes to White Knight's office to try to get answers and find out where Agent 6 and Dr. Holiday are, only for the audience to be hit with the shocking reveal that White Knight is no longer in charge and has been replaced with a new leader called Black Knight. Honestly, this episode was really one of the best when it came to Generator Rex, and it would display so many things that many of the other episodes in the series would also do really well. Fantastic fight scenes, check. Taking a character that you once viewed one way and giving them character development, check. Setting up a mysterious and interesting plot for the next episode, check. And for a moment, can we just talk about how good of an actual villain Van Kleiss was? I feel like when it comes to villains in shows made to target kids, they usually suck. Whether it's because the writers made them a bumbling idiot, or they're presented in a way where they're not even a serious threat, a majority of kid show villains are absolutely terrible. But Van Kleiss is the complete exception. He literally had every trait that makes up a good villain: intelligence, charisma, ambition. He was a manipulator, able to use people's insecurities to get them to join his cause. He was able to manipulate the people around Rex to further his plans. And most importantly, he had actual power. Every time Van Kleiss showed up on screen, you knew there was a problem, you knew something bad was gonna happen, and you knew that he was a threat. He also had this really cool theme that used to play when he showed up on screen, just to let you know that bro really had aura. But he was just one of the many reasons why Generator Rex was so ahead of its time. And when I say this, it's not an understatement, because if you look at the reviews for this show, they are overwhelmingly positive. I've yet to see a single person who's watched this show and hasn't enjoyed it. And that's probably because from season 1 all the way to season 3, this show was just that good and holds up so well with time. I mean, come on, the show was so good it did a crossover event with Ben 10, and I promise you, if you were a kid when this aired, this was like watching Avengers Endgame. But some of you are probably asking yourselves, if the show's as good as I claim, why did it only get 3 seasons, and why does Cartoon Network never mention it? Well, the simple answer is, it's because of money. You see, something that's become very public information over the last decade is that Cartoon Network invests money into shows that translate into toy sales. They buy cartoons from studios like Man of Action, and in order to make back a profit, it, they hope that the kids watching the show will get their parents to go buy toys based on the show. Like I said, Man of Action not only made Generator Rex, but also produced the original Ben 10. Have you ever wondered why Ben 10 is literally on its 5th series when the show stopped being good 3 series ago? The answer is simple, it's because Ben 10 is literally one of the most profitable shows for Cartoon Network, and I mean it's pretty easy to see why. I think anyone who grew up watching Ben 10 can agree we all wanted our own Omnitrix and we all had favorite aliens that Ben used to turn into. And not to mention the designs for the aliens were so cool from a kid's perspective. Most of them looked like something a little kid would draw. Not to mention the names were really simple: Heat Blast, Diamond Head, Forearms. From a marketing perspective, Ben 10 has everything to build a successful toy franchise on. And have you noticed over time, Ben 10's art style has drastically changed from its original art style to look more kiddie-ish? Almost like the producers specifically want to attract a young audience. This is because in the eyes of the people producing Ben 10, they don't care about milking the series dry or even if they're putting out a good show. All they care about is if the show's profitable and does it sell toys, which is something that Ben 10 does very well, but not something that Generator Rex did.
Our next kind of big animation job was Generator Rex, which we made up and sold to them because Ben 10 was a big hit, and Cartoon Network was like, make us something for older kids that's got a, you know, more sci-fi vibe, and did Generator Rex. And we did 3 seasons of it. It was a super fun show to work on, but it scared children to death internationally. In the US, it was kind of like, and in the rest of the world, it was doing okay, but it was terrifying. We heard, the story we always heard was that Germany especially was traumatized by Generator Rex. It had really dark themes. You know, it's like a kid with no parents who is in the company of an assassin, and he works for a mysterious government agency that's fighting an infectious plague that turns people into monsters. And if you're 7 years old, that's a lot. It's like getting an Avengers comic with Captain Marvel being electrocuted on the front.
Unfortunately, many of the things that made Generator Rex such a good show are the same things that held it back. Its mature themes, its dark elements. Hell, I even said in the beginning of the video, even though I liked the show, something about Rex's transformations just didn't sit right with me as a kid when I first watched it. And none of this translates well when you're trying to get kids to buy toys. When you're trying to sell a product to a kid and they're literally scared to watch the show that these toys are based on, there's no way that you're going to be able to sell anything. And that was the case for Generator Rex. Apparently, toy sales were terrible for this show. I even went on a few discussion boards online and certain people were saying that they remember seeing Generator Rex toys in the clearance sections at certain stores, which you know is never a good sign. On top of that, reportedly, Generator Rex was an expensive show to make, which kinda isn't a surprise because like I've been saying throughout this video, this show had really good animation. And I mean, the show still looks good by today's standards, so you can imagine the quality when it actually came out. So if the show was expensive to make and Cartoon Network wasn't getting a profit with toy sales, it's not really hard to see why they pulled the plug on this series. But that's actually really disappointing because I feel like Generator Rex was a good thing in a wrong place. Because rather than airing on Cartoon Network, it should have aired on something like Toonami or a more mature network. I can personally say that many of the things that made Generator Rex so good I couldn't fully appreciate as a kid because I just wasn't mature enough. But at the age I am right now, this show slaps so hard. And it's to the point now that many of the kids that grew up watching this show like I did that maybe couldn't appreciate the show as much as they should have are older now and are saying that they wish they could get a Generator Rex reboot. Which is the part I hate the most because even though this show had 3 solid seasons and wrapped up everything pretty well, this series had so much potential and could have been easily fleshed out for even more seasons. Like, let's be for real, Ben 10's still airing, and they have people who say Generator Rex 3 seasons, it's clearing Ben 10's entire catalog. But even though I didn't think Generator Rex got to reach its full potential, it still got 3 really solid seasons, which is more than you could say for a lot of other shows. It's also gone on to become somewhat of a cult classic in the online cartoon community space. So at least the show hasn't been completely forgotten and has a legacy of its own. But let me know, what did you think about Generator Rex? Did you like the show? Did you not like the show? Or is this your first time hearing about it? If this is your first time hearing about it, you should definitely go check it out because like I said, this show slaps so hard. And if you made it to the end, make sure to like the videos. It helps not only me, but also the channel out by pushing out the content to more people. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload my next video. And until then, it's been your boy CornXV, and I'm off this.
Up in this 10 years old, turn on bus master like Kobe. Pull up in Rovers, it's over. Bitch, I'm cheese Sosa, this coke. Llama, it can't want no hoes. Bottle, it can't let me pour. High as fun, just like a flow. Wanna glow, let me show you. V long thugs. I don't need no